And I want to bring in my contributors for the hour. We've got Todd Schoenberger and also Steve Cortes joining me. Guys, I've got to get your reaction because I know you have differing opinions on what we just heard Joe recite from the president. In this interview, he basically said, oh, big corporations, they're upset about regulation. That's their job to complain about regulation. Last I checked, Todd, that's not the job of U.S. corporate business.
Correct. Hey, his approach is probably the wrong approach because he's doing this us and me and I thing, and he's causing that separation. However, with that said, he has a point, and I got to tell you why. When you start thinking about regulations, you start thinking about transparency in this country. There's a great reason why we have so much foreign investment into this country is because you have so much transparency right now with these corporations. We don't have the problems that we once had, and I don't want to give out any names, but you start thinking about signing off on the bottom line of some numbers. There wasn't a good checks and balances. We do have that. Is it over the top? It may be over the top. However, it works, though, and there is an argument to support that.
No, America works in spite of regulation, and money from all over the world comes into the U.S. in spite of regulation. We would have more capital and more people flowing into the United States, more talent, if it weren't for our regulation. Now, listen, Obama sounds like somebody who's never worked in business, which he hasn't when he says it, that the job of business people is dealing with regulation. That is not the job of business people. It's to employ people, to create products that people want and need. And regulation gets in the way. And look, you and I know this. We work in finance, one of the most regulated businesses out there. The amount of time that I personally have to spend on regulation, the amount of money and effort, it is an absolute hindrance to growth.
I agree with that. I agree with that statement. However, it is working, though. You have to admit what he said is not false.
You're giving President Obama credit for the success of corporate business.
He's giving himself credit. He's giving himself credit. His approach is an us versus we or the attitude. I have a problem with that. However, he is right, though. When you start thinking about the regulations that we've seen in this country over the last several years, yeah, it's not right. But it has worked. You have a rising stock market. Granted, growth is not there. We can all accept that, and the jobs are not there.
Todd, what about when you point out the rising stock market, as the president pointed out, which many of us have already predicted that this is going to be a major talking point from the left come midterm elections, the record-breaking stock market that we've seen, that has happened on the heels of a very weak U.S. dollar, Steve, that arguably has happened because of the policies of the Federal Reserve. We have been pumping money into the system. The dollar has gone down, and that has boosted corporate profits overseas. What happens when that comes to an end, the dollar turns around, and these corporate profits don't look this way anymore? Do you really think that these record corporate profits are the result of the president's actions?
No, I certainly do not. I think you're exactly right, Sandra. This is about quantitative easing. This is about monetary policy. And that has exacerbated the divide, by the way, between Main Street and Wall Street. So Wall Street's soaring to all-time highs while Main Street just muddles through. I think you're exactly right. The stock market rally has been primarily predicated upon a weak dollar. But by the way, that's turning around very significantly over just the last couple of months. The dollar is strengthening significantly, foreseeing the end of QE, or at least the dramatic slowing of QE, and the stock market will react.
Todd, I know you want to get in here, but what about Dodd-Frank? Okay, The Economist also challenged him on Dodd-Frank, health care reform, and the negative impact that this has had on business. The Economist asked, couldn't you have made this simpler for business?
Maybe, and I don't know that answer right now, and nobody does, because we haven't seen it impact the bottom line yet. Until we do, then we can start saying, okay, all this overregulation is actually a hindrance on several items. Look, you have a PE ratio in the S&P 500. It's what, 15.4? I think the historical average is a little over 14. You can't tell me right now that overregulation is hurting the stock market. Granted, it is
hold on. I didn't say it's hurting the stock market. I'm saying it's hurting the American economy, and we don't have to guess about it.
I don't even know about that, Steve. I can't even argue with it.
We don't have to guess because we could just look at the states, right? And there's dramatic differences within the states in terms of regulation. I'm from Illinois, a state with extremely high and unpredictable regulation, not to mention a lot of corruption thrown in. Illinois is floundering. Then look at a state like Texas, where Rick Perry has created a business environment about predictable, reasonable regulation. Texas is flying. All right, it's red hot, and not just because it's summertime down in Texas right now, but partly at least because of the business climate of predictable,
Steve, not to mention high
regulation.
Unemployment and debt that the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago faces. Hold on. I'm going to say keep the passion right there, guys. By the way, he also mentions a housing market that has bounced back and an unemployment rate that's lower than pre-Lehman Brothers days. Hold to your thoughts. We're going to have you guys back.